When I started my YouTube channel over 13 years ago, I had no idea we'd ever come this far. Making tech videos, my goal has always been to showcase devices in the most human way possible. Going beyond the numbers and the spec sheets and talking about how phones, accessories, tablets, computers, vehicles, and everything else actually work in daily life. For me, it's never about using the most expensive video gear or even being the first to post something. It's about telling a story, creating a vibe and an atmosphere, while also detailing some of the coolest tech products around. Everything I do is inspired by and proudly made in Toronto, Ontario. This city inspires me every single day, as do you. Every view, like, comment, subscriber, it means more to me than you'll ever know. And for that, thank you for watching.
I hope you enjoyed that little kind of commercial that I made with some friends for my friend Isaac, who most of you know probably as Canoopsy. I'm so proud of what Isaac has been able to do with his YouTube channel. And of course, you know, getting a billboard in a major metropolitan city like Toronto is something extremely cool. And, you know, maybe one day I'll get one of those too, but mine would just be like me eating a taco and it would just like have my Twitter username. That's the extent of my accomplishments in life. It's eating tacos. Now, this whole thing came together extremely fast and furious, super Vin Diesel style. And what happened was essentially I was trying to think of ideas for things to shoot because I'm a little bit bored right now. I'm actually feeling a bit stale creatively. And I was like, look, I have all these amazing creative friends and musicians and artists and other YouTubers. And it's like, I should try and come up with something. And then, you know, I knew that Isaac had this billboard up. And to be honest, in the back of my mind for a long time, as that billboard was up, I was thinking, you know, I want to get something. I want to shoot something for Isaac to commemorate having this billboard. I think it's just really sweet. And it's not something that's super common, or it's probably not something he'll do again. Who knows? But I was like, I got to shoot something. I was thinking, do I just bring the drone out? What am I going to do to actually just like shoot something cool with this billboard? And of course I thought to myself, well, why don't I just shoot Isaac in the city and we make this little promo as like a thank you to his fan base for being able to have this opportunity to put this billboard up. And so like a lot of ideas with my friends and a lot of my own ideas, which aren't super thought out, it's just like, hey, do you want to do this? I texted Isaac and I was like, hey, do you want to do this? And if there's one thing I really love about Toronto and the creators out here is that most of them, as soon as you message something, be like, hey, I got this idea, they're almost always down. And so this was no exception. When I messaged Isaac, I was just like, hey man, do you want to make this little commercial thing? I don't know what it's going to be, but I think it'll look cool. You know what I shoot. I know what you do. I think we can figure something out. And he was 100% down. He barely had, I don't think he even had any questions at all. So then I said to him, when's this billboard coming down? And he was like, you know, it could be coming down today. It could be coming down tomorrow. It could be a week from now. And I was like, okay, we got to do this fast and furious. So essentially what happened was we shot that same day that I messaged him a whole sequence with this billboard right then and there. And so, I mean, like really, if you have an idea in your head and you're like, oh, I really want to do this, but I'm kind of stuck in my own mind about it, like I don't know what to do next. I mean, come up with like a really basic concept and just pick up your damn camera and go shoot, because that will really get the ball rolling for what needs to be done. And that's essentially what happened with this piece. Now, when I'm putting an idea together, and this really comes from my agency background when I worked in advertising, like the big thing that I'm always trying to do is convey the concept that I have in my brain. And this is always a challenge, and honestly, it's never really been that easy for me. But the one thing I think I'm pretty good at is making keynote decks, so making presentations to showcase exactly what I want to do for the piece that we're going to make. And so what I did was, after that Monday when we shot a bit of footage of Isaac out on the street, I was like, now I have a base, I have a starting point to put this piece together, because we have a little bit more time now that I know that the billboard isn't going to be a concern. It could go down today, it could go down tomorrow, it doesn't really matter. So I made this presentation basically to show, you know, Isaac, and also to show some friends that wanted to help out with this, like what are we actually going to accomplish. So using some of the footage, I just grabbed some stills from it to kind of showcase what we were about to do. I put together this very short script. Now, I'm not going to read through it. Essentially what this was a guideline for Isaac, so he knew what to write for his script. So I would say, you know, we're going to cut to this urban landscape. Isaac's going to be on his e-bike, and his voiceover I knew kind of had to say, you know, he's speaking about his YouTube journey, why and how he got started. So I just broke down the video basically into sections, and really this was more for Isaac, so he knew what he had to write for his voiceover script. So it was like a rough framework for the voiceover and also a rough framework for me to know what we'd have to shoot, and so I could also know how the edit was actually going to come together, because the last thing you really want is just all this beautiful B-roll and all this beautiful footage, but you have no story, right? So this little script here that I wrote out was our narrative. This was our arc. This was our story. The whole thing was that he had to end on the billboard itself. I always knew that was going to be the kind of final piece, and I guess I kind of worked backwards. The first thing we shot was actually the last thing in the video, and then we just sort of pieced everything back. So in the deck, I also just showed some of the footage that we already shot, so I knew that we already had all this beautiful footage of Isaac out at golden hour. And again, most of this was shot within about an hour window, and Isaac and I just kind of met up in the city by the billboard, and then I just walked around and got some extra B-roll that you saw in the piece. And you can see here, like this final piece where he walks up to the billboard and everything, already been captured, so we're good to go. And then so going into this, I was like, look, now that we have all this great footage, the next thing we need to do is just shoot the rest of this narrative. And so I messaged my buddy Lee Zavitz, who you know because I mentioned him all the time on this channel, and also Jorge, who's also been on this channel a couple times, or at least once. I messaged them being like, hey, do you guys want to go shoot this thing on Wednesday night? I've already got the shell of it basically done. Here's the deck. Here's what we're going to shoot. And of course, they were on board too. So this is what we kind of worked as our framework. Sequence one was this desk iPad situations. Isaac has done this series where he kind of goes out into the city with a desk, and I was like, I kind of want to play into that a little bit. I like it as a visual too. Originally, I was thinking like maybe it could actually feel like he was at home, and we could kind of fake the whole Corona thing of being like we were on location. But ultimately, I actually liked embracing the idea that we were outside and we set up a desk outside, because it's kind of quirky and it fits into his brand. And of course, it's a series that he's already been doing. So that was sequence one, which we're calling the desk and the iPad sequence. And then sequence two was I got some riding of him on his e-bike, but I was like, I think we're gonna need some more. And I also thought we should probably use some gimbal stuff here of just him kind of smoothly riding. And I knew Lee just got his RED Komodo, and I also know he has a Ronin M, and he's also just a wizard with a gimbal. So I was like, Lee, you know, bring the Komodo, bring the gimbal, and we'll get some shots of that. So the two sequences that I knew we had to get into to complete all of this was this desk sequence and this kind of city footage riding stuff. Now, the next thing I really wanted to plan out ahead of time before we shot was the locations. Now, I have a pretty good idea of the city, so I know where these kind of places are. And to be honest, this original location that I had set up, we didn't even end up using it. What happened was we went to the distillery, which is kind of the older part of Toronto, and I knew there's this really nice underpass there, and I actually just found out that the underpass that we used is actually being used by that new movie Spiral, which is that Chris Rock Saw movie. So you can see our frame and then you can see the Chris Rock frame, and it's like the exact same spot. So that was totally serendipitous. Really, the whole thing here is like when you get into your shoot, if you can be as planned as possible, it doesn't matter if you follow that plan entirely. It's just so that you know in the back of your mind. It's like, I don't really take notes, but I do take notes, if that makes sense. So it's like, if I'm on a call, if I'm on a meeting, I'll take notes, but I never look at those notes again. This to me is the same thing. It's like, I don't need to actually reference this document in any way, but actually writing it out and making this piece or writing my notes, it just seals it up here in the old noggin. So it's a nice way to just kind of plan your shoot. You don't have to do it, but I would say if you want to go unprepared, and especially if you're asking help from your friends, at least they know and we're all on the same page when you get on set, like this is what we're trying to accomplish, this is what we need to do, and they will hold you accountable as well. If I forgot something, I knew that Lee or Jorge or Isaac would know from this deck, don't we need to do that desk thing? Don't we need to get that? At least we're all on the same page, and I'm not trying to communicate everything because, again, this was a very last minute concept and idea. So being as prepared as possible made everything go a lot smoother. And so once we got to that location underneath the overpass, it was really just a B-roll exercise. And so I set the table up, we got a whole bunch of handheld stuff. I shot everything on the Lumix S5 personally, and then I had Lee on his Komodo. And I really enjoyed this new kind of rig that I've built for the S5. And so I shot mostly on the 35mm FD, and I also shot on the new Meike 85mm full frame cine lens, which I will have a review of very soon. But that let me get some really nice parallax footage of him kind of, shallow depth of field from a long telephoto kind of feel with the prime. But mostly I use that 35mm FD, and man, that is one exceptionally nice lens, and it let me just kind of float around handheld and get some really nice swooping shots. And then with the Komodo, really what I needed there was the gimbal stuff. And so we had Lee kind of put his gimbal on, and he sat in the back of my VW, and we just did some chase sequences so we could get Isaac on his bike. But most off, like, it was a 2-3 hour shoot. we got pizza. The good thing about Lee and Jorge, like we're all kind of on that same creative wavelength, Isaac too. So there really wasn't much communication that had to be done. We all kind of knew what needed to be accomplished. And so if you're picking your crew and you're picking your friends, make sure they're friends that kind of know what they're doing and then at least have the same, creative language as you, because on a last minute shoot like this, when you only have a certain amount of time, like a day or a couple hours, you can't be explaining yourself 10 times on what the vision is of the thing that you're trying to make. And so having Lee and having Jorge and having Isaac made all of this just so much easier that I knew at the end of the day, this was really going to be an editing exercise. And speaking of editing, here we are back in Final Cut. So this is something I like to do now with most of my edits that have a voiceover or even a documentary if you're doing an interview, and they call it a radio edit. And the reason it's called a radio edit is because, as you can see, there's no picture in my timeline. So once Isaac sent me his voiceover, which he did an exceptional job on, he even wrote the script based off of my script and he nailed every single part. What I did was I just brought it into Final Cut and I started playing with music, which is a great segue to today's sponsor, which is MusicBed. So a piece like this relies entirely on music. And I want to show you, here was an early draft of what this piece could have been like, and it was an entirely different song. And I was kind of teetering back and forth in my brain. I'm like, how emotional do I want this? Is it somber? And it really shouldn't be too sad. It had to feel emotional, but uprisingly, and it sounds, that's literally generic stock terms for music, but it had to be driving forward. It had to feel like it had some energy, but I didn't want it to feel too cheesy. And I really didn't want it to feel too somber and sad either. So that was the really delicate balance here. So I'm going to play this first radio edit right now of how this could have gone before I ever even thought to put footage on top. So this was an early draft of this piece.
When I started my YouTube channel over 13 years ago, I had no idea we'd ever come this far. Making tech videos, my goal has always been to showcase devices in the most human way possible, going beyond the numbers and the spec sheets and talking about how phones, accessories, tablets, computers, vehicles, and everything else actually work in daily life. For me, it's never about using the most expensive video gear or even being the first to post something. It's about telling a story, creating a vibe and an atmosphere, while also detailing some of the coolest tech products around. Everything I do is inspired by and proudly made in Toronto, Ontario. This city inspires me every single day, as do you. Every view, like, comment, subscriber, it means more to me than you'll ever know. And for that, thank you for watching.
So here's the thing. It's good. I actually like it quite a bit. It could have totally been an alternate cut that worked exceptionally well. I could have easily just dropped some footage onto this and it worked well. What bothered me about this specific song was this moment here. It's when it starts to rise.
Every view, like, comment, subscriber, it means more to me than you'll...
It started to just feel a little bit too generic corporate for me. I really love the intro of this song. I like this.
When I started my YouTube channel,
that stuff is cool and that kind of piano vibe was good, but as it started to crescendo and rise, it was just kind of losing the vibe for me. And I knew that even when I put picture to it, just wasn't going to work for me. Could it have worked and people would have loved it? Absolutely. It was more of a personal thing for me. So even though that is a really good song, and like I said, I love this intro part right here, but where it lost me was this kind of stuff. This stuff sounds cool, but for me, it's a little bit too fitness video. It's a little bit too just, I don't know, overly inspirational. And I didn't really want that to be the vibe. Now, here's a tip for MusicBed in general. Usually I already have a library of music on my computer that I just pull from because I tend to listen to MusicBed when I'm not actually creating something because I find that my headspace is entirely different. And what'll happen is I'll hear songs and they will inspire the video that I want to make rather than the other way around. And I think a lot of people approach it video first And I honestly think you should start approaching music first. So start listening to music and start using, the Music Bed app. You can use it on your iPad, you can use it on your iPhone. And instead of listening to Spotify, I mean, you can even listen to their Spotify playlist if you want to, but instead of listening to Apple Music or whatever, start listening to stuff on Music Bed. And what will happen is you'll start favoriting songs, you'll start liking things that you'll say, hey, my next video, I definitely want my intro to be that intro from that track that I heard the other day. Or, this song that I'm listening to right now, this is totally inspiring me to want to shoot a commercial. So I'm going to make that spec ad out of it. And so instead of getting stuck when you're, trying to make your video and you spend hours looking for music, spend those hours just listening to music because you would have been listening to music anyway. So you might as well use that music productively for the next video that you're going to make. Now, I didn't listen to my own advice here. And what happened was once I got down and sit to this edit, I actually spent quite a bit of time looking for music. Now, once I did stumble on the song by Jenerdine, and I hope I'm saying that right, I just went and clicked on their artist profile and I started finding other songs. And the song that really stuck out for me was this one called Wonder. And so Wonder right here still has that kind of timbre at the beginning. But that synthwave, that is up my alley. That is right in my Q zone, as they say. And so I knew I could visualize the whole thing right now of like him in the city. Everything I wanted was coming from this song. And so Music Bed made that exceptionally easy. And I'll be listening to this artist quite a bit now in my off time between videos to inspire the next piece that I make. So I'm gonna bring this back to a radio edit now with the new music, and you can hear how I paced everything out. So essentially what happened was I put the music in, I put Isaac's voiceover in, and now it's all about pacing. Now, I'm not gonna get into the full nitty gritty detail of like what shots I used, how I picked my shots. I really think the takeaway here is the radio edit. Like honestly, I edited this whole video without picture first, and then I layered in my picture afterwards and made small tweaks in terms of pacing. But for the most part, I had to match the voiceover to the pacing of the song. And so this is the new radio edit without visuals, just with the new song. I'm not gonna play the whole thing because you've already seen the full ad, but you can see how I paced it out here in my timeline.
When I started my YouTube channel over 13 years ago, I had no idea we'd ever come this far.
Now you can hear the songs had these little like sounds in them, and I thought, it'd be really cool to use those as just little like kind of transitionary periods where as that kind of crescendo comes in, let's have a break and a pause in the voiceover. So as we come through, you can see
we'd ever come this far.
It's just a nice little transition into the next spot. So that happened quite a few times where I've just put these little gaps in the voiceover and let the music kind of come back up. And so I'm just ducking the audio here up and down as I go through. Now, really try to edit your voiceover or your interview to the music to just get a feel of the pacing. Like just sit there, a lot of times I'll just close my eyes and I'll hit the space bar and play, and I'll just zone out and be like, is the pacing working? Am I flowing well? Does it feel like it's dragging? Does it feel like it's going too fast? And really that's what that radio edit helps with. So once I did the radio edit and I knew the voiceover was in a good place, it was just really now grabbing footage to match what he was talking about. So as he talks about Toronto, I wanted to make sure I had shots of Toronto and the city and stuff. And really the only major thing that I had to make sure lined up well was this last scene when he walks up and he says, thank you. So I'll just play that real quick.
Than you'll ever know. And for that, thank you for watching.
So another really good thing was this song had this just like piano chord progression at the end, and I just used that as the matchup for the supers at the end, the title. So it just goes. And that was really a happy accident because I hadn't planned that in my head, but that's a little happy thing that you find as you're editing and you're looking for those moments in the beats where you can kind of accentuate things. That is one of those perfect moments where the song ended with a 4-chord progression right there that was perfect for 4 titles. It's something you could try and think about as you're looking for music, but I am always kind of looking for music that has drops and peaks and valleys, especially if there's going to be a voiceover, because that's how you're going to play with the tone and the pacing of your piece. If you have a peak, that's where you have energy. When you have a flat point, that's where you can kind of slow down a little bit, and it matches the pacing and the tonality of the voiceover as well. So now I'm gonna hop into Resolve. And the reason I wanted to use Resolve is I'm now using a new plugin called Filmbox for my film emulation. And that's why I wanted to do the grade here in Resolve, because this emulation really is only for Resolve. They might be for Adobe as well, but I'm not entirely sure. But I'll save this for another video. I just wanted to show you this is how we graded it. And so this is Filmbox. So taking the S5 log footage, I literally just drag and drop Filmbox onto here, click that sucker back on, and look, you get all of your log profiles that you want to choose from. And so I was using the Lumix S5, so that's the vlog profile. But once you're in here, you've got full camera control for exposure, your temperature, and you can even get into things like halation, which I think is really interesting. So if I switch to a clip that had some lights in it, and if I turn that halation off, you can see it goes away there. So let me just zoom in a bit there. So once the halation is on, we're gonna get that nice red glow that I love, that really is like a Cinestill 800T kind of vibe. And honestly, I'm just so hyped on this Filmbox film emulation. It's probably the best turnkey film emulation that I've ever seen. It's got dust and scratches, it's got grain, it's gonna give you a bit of a film gate look to it as well too. It just works so well. So we did the entire grade in Resolve, and the edit was done in Final Cut. So then once the grade was done, I actually bounced back into Final Cut. Again, don't follow this convoluted tech process. I'm just showing you how I put this together. It doesn't have to be the right way for you. Once it was done, and you're gonna have like 10 exports every video you do, and this was like literally the same thing here, where I had like 12 of these videos sitting on my desktop. And so I was watching them back, and every time I watched one, I would find some new thing I wanted to change. And then finally, the last one I was like very happy with, but the only thing I wanted to do was add a little bit of sound design. And by sound design, I just added a little bit of city. So you can see here in this cut,
When I started my YouTube channel,
so we've got just a little bit of the car passing by, so I'll isolate this so you can't hear it, and you'll just hear the sound design now. So it just gave it some ambience. It just gave it a little bit of a vibe. And I didn't care to have sound design through the entire piece, but I knew that first, 3-4 seconds was really crucial to draw the audience in. So I thought, adding a little bit of that city ambience, get the sound of the car driving by, and you're kind of just immersed into this world now. And the only other time I brought that back was at the end when he does his voiceover, because it kind of goes to nothing with the music. And so I wanted something to kind of fill that gap as he was speaking at the end. So you can see the city is back in this layer now.
and for that, thank you for watching.
And you can hear if I got rid of that, it sounds just a little bit weird.
And for that, thank you for watching.
So it actually worked as room tone, because I didn't really have much room tone aside from like city ambience, but I can just add city ambience easily. Final Cut has it built in, you can get free sound effects on the internet, but the city ambience just added a little bit more life to the piece, brought everything together, and that was it. The only other thing was adding the titles at the end, which is very self-explanatory, and Isaac's logo, but otherwise, hey, that is how we made a commercial in about 2 days. A week start to finish, but really 2 days of shooting. And I've had a whole bunch of other stuff going on in my life work-wise. So we just really fit this in last minute. And look, you plan, you prep, you get your stuff ready to go. And then once you're in the edit, it's really just an editing exercise. It's just having some fun, playing around with music from MusicBed, getting the right song, getting the right tone, getting the right pacing. If you have questions about this really bizarre and kind of interesting process to put this piece together, please let me know in the comments. If you have a dumb question, I will delete it. If you're just going to be rude, I will block you. Click the link in the description to sign up for MusicBed. Honestly, I've been using them for years now, and even if they weren't a sponsor, I would be paying monthly for this, no question, because they are the best stock music out there. And I don't even like to call it stock music. It's just good music that you can use for your projects. But that's it for me. I'm Patrick Tomasso, and you will see me next time I feel like making a video. Cheers. I'm literally drinking hell right now because, wow, am I tired. Okay, and cut.